Hey there ladies and gents, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be looking at an Xbox One original which has been sent in, and this console's been sent in because it's got no power. So basically it just doesn't turn on, and it's been looked at by another shop and they couldn't figure it out, so they've sent it over to me. So hopefully we can figure it out, get this console working again. They are quite old now, but people are still getting them repaired because it's still fairly difficult to get the new generation and a lot of people just simply can't afford it. So yeah, they're still getting these repaired, and to be honest, I quite enjoy working on these. It's been a while since I've seen one of them, but you know, we're going to give it a try, hopefully get it fixed and make the customer happy. But with that being said, if you are new to the channel and you like this type of content, then I would really appreciate it if number one, you hit subscribe and turn on the bell notifications, and number two, you give the video an early thumbs up. It really does help out the channel. And if you want to support the channel in any way, shape or form, there'll be some links in the video description. You can become a channel member by clicking on the join button below the video. You can become a Twitch Prime subscriber by heading over to Twitch and linking your Amazon Prime account. Or there's some donation links in the video description as well. And also, I do want to just show Discord. We've got almost 1,000 users on Discord. So there'll be a link in the video description to Discord. Click on that link, it'll take you straight to my Discord invite page where you can join up and come along and chat with the community or get some help with the issues that you might be facing as well. So with that being said, let's get into this repair. Right, we are. So, like I said, this is a classic Xbox One. I think it's a 1540, is it? I can never remember the model numbers to these, but I'm pretty sure it's a 1540. But anyway, we're going to plug in a known good power supply first of all. So it's always important to use known good parts with these, just to rule out any kind of issue with the power brick and things like that. Let's just see what's going on, shall we? And yeah, completely dead. Okay, so no life at all from the power button. Let's just offer up a disc and make sure that we don't have an issue with the front panel before we go any further. So I've got Destiny, and yep, nothing at all. Alright, so it's not going to be the front, although at least the main issue isn't going to be the front panel unless something's been left unplugged. And oh, okay, this has still got the warranty sticker on it. That's interesting. The light did stay orange, so it's likely going to be some sort of a board issue. So this has been to another repair shop. Oh, actually no, that's been lifted off. Never mind. All right, so they did lift that off. All right, so we'll get this apart and see what's going on inside. Hopefully it's going to be a nice simple fix, but we'll see. So I will fast forward through this disassembly process. I mean, we've all seen them taken apart before. If you haven't, I highly recommend checking out iFixit's guide. It's a fantastic guide for disassembling these things. But it's nice and simple to get into anyway, so it's not too bad. Right, we are then. So we're inside the console now, or rather we're down to the motherboard. So there's a few things that I want to do. The first thing that I want to check is going to be this area around here. So this area around here is basically the power management circuit, and we get power coming in. It goes through this chip here, the NCP4204, and then it goes to these MOSFETs and MOSFET drivers here. So that's where 12 volt comes in. So what we want to do is we want to check and see if any of these components around here are shorted to ground. And if they are, then the likely scenario is just replacing a MOSFET and be done with it. So we'll pop into the microscope and we'll see what's going on, and hopefully we can figure this out. Hopefully it's going to be a nice simple fix. Alright, so we've got the main power management area here, and as you can see there's a few components around here. We're going to test certain components just to see what's going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the multimeter and set it into diode mode. So that's going to give me a reading on the voltage drop to ground on certain components. And the certain value is what we're expecting to see. So I'm in diode mode, and my red probe I'm going to pop on ground. So my positive lead, for any of you old timers out there who still call it a positive lead. And the black probe I'm going to pop on this point here. So basically the way this works is when it comes from this chip here this NCP4204, it comes through here and then it goes through here, and this is the source on the MOSFET, this is the gate, and this is the drain. Basically what we want to do is we want to check for a short on the gate, and we get 0.608 volts to ground, and that is perfectly normal, so that's an acceptable reading. The same on that one. We get the same on that one. And we get the same on that one as well. So we've definitely got no issues with those MOSFETs. Yeah, this might be a bad one straight away, right off the bat. Oh, this is gonna suck. Okay, well, I was hoping it was gonna be nice and easy, but no. Never mind. So I'm just gonna take a little hunt around the board. We're gonna go on a trip now. I'm just gonna scan through quickly and just see if I can find anything obvious before I go any further. And I'm not seeing anything, which is not good. So let's just have a look around here. So this MOSFET here is the gate. That's reading open line. Oh, hang on. I haven't even got my red probe connected. Well, it's not going to give me any connection there, is it? All right. 0.420. 0.479. That's all perfectly normal. So that means we've got to have an issue with one of the other voltage rails. So the problem we've got is figuring out what voltage rail is missing. I'm going to say it's probably going to be the 3.3 volt rail which is missing, to be honest. So let's just plug this back in. Let's keep an eye on what's going on with the power brick as well, because that can give us an indicator. Now this power brick is a known good power brick. I do know 100% that this works. Okay. Alright. So I'm going to get the multimeter back into view. And let's ground it. So we've got power coming in. Or we should have power coming in. Do we have 12 volts down here? We do not. We've got no 12 volt coming in at all. Well, that's kind of odd. So we've got no power coming in whatsoever. We do have 3.3 volts. We've got 1.8 volts. We've got 3.3 volts standby. We are missing 5 volts. So why are we missing 5 volts? So that means that 5 volts isn't making its way from the power supply into here. Now we need to figure out why. So what is the resistance on the 5 volt line? Dead short. Dead short. So the 5 volt line is up here. You've got a marking there to say that. If I just show you that. So there are markings on the board which tell us where things are, and as you can see there we've got 5P0 dual, which is a 5 volt test point, and we are missing 5 volts there, so we need to figure out why. Now 5 volts is short, which is why we're not getting 12 volts activated. So the way it works is on the power supply itself we've got 2 power rails. We've got the 5 volt rail and we've got the 12 volt rail. The 12 volt rail won't turn on until the 5 volt rail tells it to. So basically for power saving measures the 5 volt rail is always on, and then when it's plugged in it's supposed to tell the power supply to activate the 12-volt rail, and then it allows it to turn on. Now obviously, as you can see here, if we look in diode mode as well, you'll see that we've got a dead short to ground, as well as in continuity mode, dead short to ground. So we need to figure out why it's short to ground. So what I'm going to do, rather than sitting there trying to trace this back and trying to figure out exactly what's on the 5-volt line and what could be causing it, I'm going to just inject some voltage into the 5-volt rail. So basically I'm going to inject 1 volt. So I've got my bench power supply set up right now, and I've got it set to 5 amps at 1 volt. And I'm just going to touch the, oh wow, that's a 5 amp short. Okay, it's just dropped to 2.5 amps. So what I'm going to need to do, I think, is use my thermal camera and see what immediately gets hot as soon as I turn this on. So I'm going to load up my Flare software. I've got the Flare 1 USB-C. So I'm just going to wait for this to turn on. So I'm recording this now so I can include it on the screen. And here we are. Something there is getting pretty hot. So you can see that there, that's getting pretty darn hot right there. And that is that there. It's something around here. I've got a feeling it's going to be a small capacitor just here. So let's pop back under the microscope and we're going to take a look in that area there. Okay, so it's something around here by the look of it. That's where it's getting hot. So what I'm going to do, if I just spray this area with some isopropyl alcohol, so just flood it with IPA. IPA is non-conductive, it's not going to hurt, but what it's going to do is it's going to pinpoint the location of the shorted component, or it should. Okay, so can you see that there? So there's definitely heat in this area, but the question is, what is causing it? Spray some more IPA, and I'm just going to inject again in 3, 2, 1. Okay, it looks like this is getting hot first. I'm just going to feel it with my fingers. Wow, that does get hot pretty darn quickly. So I'm not entirely convinced that that is the cause. I'm going to remove the capacitors just above it. So as far as I know, that's not connected to ground. I think that's some sort of fuse. I'm pretty sure of it. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that's a fuse, what's getting hot. So this component here. So I'm going to remove this cap here, because this cap is definitely connected to ground. So I've got my hot air at 480 degrees, and that's at 40% airflow. Okay. So I'll just drop that there for a minute. And let's just see if we still have a short to ground. It doesn't appear that we do. So I'm going to keep my probe right there, and then I can show you the multimeter on the screen. So my probe is right there now, and as you can see, no short to ground. No short on that bigger component, That's short, obviously, because that's ground. And let's grab this cap. And there's the capacitor. Let's just see if that's got continuity from one side to the other. Because when a cap goes short, it basically turns into a wire. Can you hear that? That cap is bad. And that is the cause of our short. So you might be wondering to yourself now why I went for that cap there. There's a couple of reasons I went for that cap there. Number one, it's the biggest cap. It's the easiest to remove. Number two is that the fuse below it, or at least what I think is a fuse, I'm pretty sure it's a fuse, but that component below it isn't connected to ground. Or at least it shouldn't be if it's a fuse. Why would you have a fuse connected to ground? So let's just double check that. So we've got continuity from there to there. Oh. Yeah, no, it's not. Just a bit of residual power. So, yeah, we've got continuity from there to there. But we haven't got continuity to ground. Which means that that's not going to be the cause of the short. Because you can't get a short to ground on a component that's got no ground on it. Unless the short was on a certain side of the board and it just so happened that this was getting hot. Then it is possible for this component to make a difference, but we'd still have a short on one side, but we wouldn't have a short on the other. So that's one way you can find out which side of the circuit the short is on, by just removing a fuse. But because the component isn't connected to ground, it's kind of pointless for me removing it, because it's getting hot in this area. So whether or not I remove this fuse and isolate the short doesn't really matter too much. It's still going to tell me, it's still not going to tell me that where the short actually is. So it's pointless removing this component. So I've gone for the most obvious, which is going to be one of these two capacitors here, because the capacitor does have a short to ground. So it has got a connection to ground on this side here. So this part here, just move that flux out of the way. So this part here is ground, whereas this part isn't. So if it wasn't this cap, then I'd have removed this cap. And if it wasn't this cap, then I'd have looked on the other side of the board and see if there's anything on the other side of the board that it could potentially have been. So what I need to do now is just simply remove that cap. But even that isn't really necessary. It's one capacitor on a line which has probably got 50 other capacitors on it. One cap isn't going to make too much of a difference, but I do still want to replace it because it was there to start with. So I want to try and keep it as close to factory as possible by actually replacing the cap. It's a little bit awkward to actually get to this area, but like I said, it's not really necessary to actually replace it. Okay, there we go. So that's tinned. So I've prepped that area with some fresh leaded solder. So what I'm going to do, I don't know the value of that capacitor. So the only real way that I can actually do anything is by taking one from a donor board. I could measure the capacitor on the donor board, but that means charging up my LCR tweezers, and nah, just can't really be bothered to do that. So I may as well just replace it with a donor capacitor. So I've got one which I've just pulled from a donor board in the same place. And there we go. So that cap's been replaced with one from a donor. So now the question is it going to work? Let's just clean up. A bit of isopropyl alcohol just to clean up that flux, and then I'm just going to scrub it with a toothbrush. And actually it's a bit difficult to get to it with a toothbrush, so I'll do it with a cotton swab. Bit of rapid dry technology, that is patented. No, I'm joking. Just use a bit of heat just to dry up that isopropyl alcohol there. So let's just test and make sure that we don't have a short anymore, just in case I've put a bad capacitor on there. And nope, no short. And there we go. No short. Excellent. So the problem with using donor boards is obviously you never know what components are good and what are bad unless you know the history of the board. So to be fair, I've got that many boards which I use for donors that I just don't know the history of them anymore. So unfortunately, I'll never know when the component is going to be bad. But with that being said, do we now have 5 volts back at the correct location? I can hear power running through. It's got like a little buzz. So I think we've got 5 volts back. I'm going to hazard a guess and say yes. Let's just have a look. Same location. 5.11 volts. 5.10 volts. Yep. That should be turning on. Do we have 12 volts enabled now? Let's find out. We do. Oh, hang on. Okay, it is turning on. It is turning on. It has just shut down because it's overheating, because there's no heatsink on there, but we are getting 12 volts. Whether or not it's beep on, beep off, I don't know, but we're going to find out. I'm going to put some fresh thermal paste on. Alright, so I am just going to give this heatsink a good brush down first before I put it back together. Okay, that's nice and clean. Beautiful looking. So let's just pop this back on. And I'm pretty confident this is going to work now, to be honest. Alright, so I'm going to get this back inside the housing. So it's pretty much ready to be screwed back down. In fact, I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to put it all back together. Why not? Okie dokie. It's fully back together. Let's give it a test. So we're going to go for the capture card and see if it works on there. Actually, before we do that, let's just make sure that the ports are not broken, and it doesn't appear as though they are. A little bit of dust in there, but the reason I'm checking that is because we did have a blown capacitor in that area, and it is part of the USB circuit as far as I'm aware, but they do seem absolutely fine, so I'm more than happy to call this good as long as it works. But it should work. Okay, it's staying turned on. There we go. Let's just make sure it takes a disc and ejects it. Perfect. I'm going to leave that in there so I can test the disk drive. And let's go to the capture card. And there is the Xbox logo. Absolutely awesome. And yep, I know it overheated. That's because I turned it on while the heatsink wasn't on. And boom, there we go. And Destiny is picking up. So obviously that's got to install, unless I've already got the game. Oh, okay. They might already have it. Let's just set up the Wi-Fi and check it. Okay, checking connection, and boom, there we go. So that's working. It's going to want me to update, which is not happening. So we're going to skip that. So I can update it, but just not while I'm doing a video. Yeah, that all seems to be working absolutely fine, and I'm more than happy with that result. Right, there we go. As you can see, it's fully working, and that one tiny capacitor, which cost a couple of pence, was causing the entire thing to not work. So yeah, obviously I tested the MOSFETs. I've got a certain process which I use for testing, when I'm trying to diagnose a fault. And the first thing I always go for is the MOSFETs, because that's the most common. So they were all showing up good, so I proceeded to check the voltage rails. So we've got the 1.1, the 1.8, the 3.3 and the 5 volt rails. They're the most common ones. Turned out that the 5 volt rail was missing, and that was because it was shorted to ground, so all of the voltage was being pulled down to ground. So basically injecting 1 volt, I was actually at 1.4 volts, I didn't realise, but 1.4 volts is absolutely fine. But by injecting 1.4 volts, I was able to use the thermal cam. Honestly, if you're doing this for a living, if you're doing any kind of repairs, even as a hobby, if you can, get one of these. It doesn't have to be this one, but honestly, in fact, I wouldn't recommend this one because it seems like they lose calibration between the camera and the actual thermal imaging sensor. So I wouldn't actually recommend this one. I don't think they're that good. And these cost £240, so I don't think they're worth the money. But that being said, that thing has paid for itself over and over and over again, because it saved me so much time. It would have taken me so long just to find that, because the problem is, without schematics, we don't know what's on that rail. We don't know exactly where everything is. Without sitting there probing for hours and hours on end, it would have taken me forever to find that shorty capacitor without the thermal cam. The thermal cam did point me in the right direction. It gave me a general area, so down to, you know, a couple of centimetres on the board. And then I was able to pinpoint it using isopropyl alcohol. There is IPA in that bottle. I'll just basically put it into a spray bottle, because then I can clean on my desk and stuff like that. It's a lot easier. But I was able to isolate it using isopropyl alcohol, and then seeing what got hot and what evaporated the quickest. And that told me that it was in that area. And like I said, it's not always the most obvious component. You have to do a little bit of thinking. So it doesn't give you all the answers, but you have to do a little bit of thinking. And my line of thought was that the component that was getting hot wasn't connected to ground, or at least as far as I'm aware, it was a fuse and shouldn't be connected to ground. You wouldn't have a fuse connected to ground, because that would pull a line straight down to ground, and you wouldn't fuse ground anyway. So the next logical thing it could have been was the caps above it, because that's the area what was getting hot. It's not always the exact component what is getting hot, what's shorted. It's just that that's where all of the current is passing through, which is why that component was getting hot. So obviously by popping that capacitor off, putting a new one on, didn't even need to technically put one on, but you know, it wouldn't be a proper job if I didn't, so I did put it back on. But by replacing that capacitor, it's all fully working, and this customer can game once again. So yeah, super happy with the result. It took me an hour to do, and that was including faffing around with the cameras and things like that. Every time I switch a scene, I have to change scenes, I have to move cameras, I have to do all of this sort of stuff, and make sure that it's all showing properly, make sure it's all in focus for you guys and stuff. So it does take longer to actually do. So if I was doing this on my own in the workshop, you're probably talking less than 40 minutes from start to finish. Probably 30 minutes at a push, I would say, from start to finish. And that was to fault find, fix and test. So yeah, more than happy with the result, and hopefully you enjoyed the video. So with that being said, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you do have any comments or questions, leave them down in the comment section down below. I'll always do my best to answer. If you do want to organise a repair, there'll be some links in the video description to my website where you can book it in. You can open up a ticket if you want to get a custom quote if you've got an issue that I don't list on the website, or you can get in touch using the email address as well that's on there, and get in touch to ask any questions about a repair that you might want to send to me. If you've got any questions about a repair that you're doing yourself, there's a Discord link in the video description. Head over to Discord and you can get some help that way. That way it eases the load off me, it doesn't spam all my inboxes, and it allows me to kind of prioritise things. Obviously I have to prioritise customers because they pay the bills. So if you do have a question that you want to get some help with on fixing your own device, head over to Discord or ask in the comment section and I'll reply whenever I can, or maybe someone from the community will read the comments as well. If you do want to support me anyway, if you find these videos useful, then you can, of course, head over to Twitch and become a Twitch Prime subscriber. You can take some money out of Jeff Bezos' pockets, and I'm pretty sure he's got enough. He's not going to miss $250. So link your Amazon Prime account if you've got one, and then you can subscribe on Twitch for free, and that will give me $2.50 for every person that does it. You do have to resubscribe every month, but you know, it's a 5-second process and it doesn't cost you a penny to do. Massively helps out the channel, and for that I really do appreciate it. So with that being said, that is going to be it for now. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later. Bye for now.